What's going on, guys? Vic here with PhoneArena, and it's embargo day for the Galaxy S23 lineup. The new phones are officially announced and we're going over the 3 new models. So we got the Galaxy S23, the S23 Plus and the S23 Ultra. And first we've got to talk about the design. The S23 and the S23 Plus now look a lot like the Ultra. Each camera has its own enclosure, and I have to say I like this new look much better. And if you peek in closer, you can see how each lens is protected by a metal ring around it, so it not only looks better but will hopefully protect the cameras from scratches too. The S23 Ultra remains the big guy in the series. It's definitely heavier and bulkier than the other two phones. Now here are the dimensions and the weight of the S23 Ultra against the S22 Ultra. As you can see, it's just a tiny bit heavier, but mostly it looks the same. Samsung has tweaked some little details, like the cameras are bigger now, so old cases will not fit. You still have a slightly curved screen, but the sides of the phone are now flatter. Not completely flat like the iPhone, but they have less of a curve, and the power and volume keys are just a bit bigger, which is nice to see. The Ultra comes in 4 colors. You have the classic black, and then the white color is now gone, and instead you have this cream version. You also get a lilac one, and I personally am a huge fan of that new botanic green version. But let me know which color do you like best in the comments. Now, before we dig in the new features, let's quickly go over the specs that this phone is packing. We're looking at the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor for all models, coupled with either 8 gigs or 12 gigs of RAM. And that new chip is big time. It doesn't overheat as much as previous Qualcomm chips and it's huge for gaming. The other news is that no matter where you buy the phone, it will have the same Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip. In previous years, Samsung used the less capable Exynos processor in overseas models of the Galaxy, so a round of applause that this is no longer the case. Having just 8 gigs of RAM for the base model, however, feels a bit like a low blow to me. 12 gigs sounds much more reasonable for an Ultra phone that you're kind of supposed to push to its limits. On the flip side though, the base model of the Ultra now comes with 256 gigs of storage, which is double what we had last year, so you have double the space for your photos and videos, and again, kudos to Samsung for that. Now let's move on to the display. It's the same huge 6.8-inch size with these sharp edges that are really signature for the series. It hits 750 nits of peak brightness, which was really impressive last year. It hasn't changed this year. But yeah, it's a Samsung AMOLED screen, which means the quality is top-notch. And you've got 120Hz LTPO technology, which again means it will automatically adjust the refresh rate depending on what you're doing, so you'll get super smooth scrolling when you move around the menus and when browsing the web. But otherwise it will automatically drop to a lower refresh rate to save battery. You also have an ultrasonic fingerprint reader, the familiar one, which works just like before. On the bottom you've got your USB-C port for charging, the S Pen on the left hand side, and it seems to be pretty much the same S Pen as before, at least in our short time with it. Now of course we've gotta talk about these new cameras. Samsung has a brand new main camera which can do a lot better in low light, and I feel like that's the biggest selling point of the Ultra. So we've got 4 cameras on the back, a 200 megapixel main shooter, a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, and 2 10 megapixel zoom cameras at 3x and 10x zoom. But of course it's the main camera that grabs the attention. This is the first Samsung phone with a 200 megapixel camera, so you might think that it's all about having a lot more detail with such an increase in the number of pixels. And sure, you can take pictures in the full 200 megapixel resolution, but the default setting actually combines 16 of those pixels into one super pixel, and the idea is that you still get 12 megapixel shots like most other phones, but thanks to that pixel binning process you get far less noise at night. So we'll put this to a test in a separate video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss that. Samsung also says you get better portrait mode shots in low light and better video quality, and as someone who records a lot of videos indoors, I'm really excited about this feature. One other thing that I am kind of stoked for is 8K video. Now Samsung has had 8K video for about 2 years now, but it was heavily cropped in. And with the Galaxy S23 Ultra you get 8K at 30 frames per second, so I can't wait to test that out. Now if you want to take your images to the next level, Samsung has now baked in its Expert RAW camera feature right in the camera app instead of it being a separate application, so that's appreciated. And with that mode on, you get a new 50 megapixel RAW mode capture. So not quite the full 200 megapixel resolution, but still plenty of detail at a more reasonable size, which makes sense. And the rest is pretty much the same as last year. The battery size is 5000 mAh. Samsung says it's a battery that lasts, and I quote, more than a day, but a small upgrade would have been nice here. And by the way, the same goes for charging speeds. You get again 45 watt charging, which should take around an hour with some change for a full top-up, while other Android phones now charge from 0 to full in less than half an hour, so Samsung is slightly behind the pack here. The interface, it is very familiar. If you've used a Samsung phone before, you know what to expect. It's the latest One UI 5.1 with Android 13. We noticed it works a bit smoother than before, but again, we'd have to test that. The nice thing is that this phone gets way longer software support than many of its competitors, so Samsung promises 4 years of Android version updates and 5 years of security updates. Finally, prices. So the prices in the US and Canada remain the same as last year. The base model of the S23 Ultra with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage goes for around $1,200 US, and you can also get a version with 12 gigs of RAM and 512 gigabytes of storage for a bit more. And you will also have a 1 terabyte model. Now, unfortunately, prices overseas will see a pretty dramatic increase. Take a look at the change in prices in the UK. I don't think that Samsung is to blame, with inflation and currency fluctuations being the factors here, but you got to wonder if the S22 Ultra, which is now sold at huge discounts, is actually not the better value internationally. Anyway, stay tuned for the full review, camera, battery tests, all that good stuff will be coming soon. We also have the S23 and the S23 Plus covered in another video, so don't miss that too. And we're also on the web at PhoneArena.com, so check us out. Anyway, my name is Vic, thanks for sticking until the end. Hit me up with your thoughts about the new Galaxy in the comments. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed watching this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.